Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are dropping anchor in Buckeye City, a place locals sometimes lovingly or maybe cynically call the second mistake on the lake.
Yeah, not exactly a ringing endorsement.
Not at all. And we're pulling together a stack of sources that put us right in the middle of a really chilling, developing crime story. It's equal parts legal injustice, personal tragedy, and, well, impending mass violence.
It's a study in extremes, really. We have a man who was framed, a man trying to stay sober under a secret identity, a confession that, arrived far too late.
And this cryptic threat, it feels horrifyingly specific.
Exactly. Our sources introduce us to these key players, the framed man, Alan Duffery, this conflicted person, Trigg, and the investigators, Izzy Janes and Gibney, who have to figure out what the author even means by atonement.
That's it. The mission is to connect these lives that seem so separate and understand the driving logic behind a plan that threatens 14 people. We need to go past the plot and really analyze the philosophy someone is using to justify murder.
Okay, so let's start. A miserable March afternoon. We're in the basement of the Buell Street Methodist Church.
Right, the scene of the Straight Circle meeting.
Yeah.
Now, it's technically a Narcotics Anonymous meeting, but the sources make it clear it's always packed with alcoholics, too.
It's this environment where, sobriety is the goal, but attendees still cling to a couple of socially okay vices.
Nicotine and coffee.
Nicotine by the communal butt can outside, and coffee down the street at a place called The Flame. It's a place of really fragile resolution.
And that fragility is just perfectly personified by this man we only know as Trigg.
Mm-hmm.
He's there because he travels out of town for these meetings.
Yeah.
He needs to be anonymous.
And why? Because 3 years ago, his real name was everywhere, all over the papers.
But he's hiding successfully. The sources note this really dramatic physical change. He's clean-shaven, wears glasses. He looks so much younger than the guy with the graying beard and contacts who's in the news.
He kind of enjoys being someone else, but that dual identity, that secret, it's a massive weight. It's the psychological paradox, He's chasing honesty in his recovery while living this fundamental lie.
And on March 24th, that weight almost broke him. He's at an emergency meeting because he is right on the edge. He says if he takes that first drink, all his choices, all his progress, it's just gone.
And what's fascinating is this conversation he has with Reverend Mike, who they call Big Book Mike. Mike notes how deeply shaken Trigg sounded.
Right.
Trigg admits he lost someone who died in lockup. He keeps up that veneer of a half-truth.
But we know, and Trigg knows, the truth is so much worse. That person didn't just die, he was murdered. Shanked in a prison shower that same Saturday.
And Trigg is just holding on to that violent, specific knowledge and the whole recovery structure, which, demands this emotional honesty. It just doesn't seem to have room for that kind of horror.
No. And that's suppressed horror. That's the tinderbox. Then, 13 days later, April 6th, the fire is lit.
He's reading the Sunday paper and sees the feature story. The headline is, Buckeye Brandon, murdered prison inmate, may have been innocent.
This is the moment. The external injustice crashes into his internal need for amends. He reads the feature, listens to the podcast that goes with it, hosted by this Buckeye Brandon, the outlaw of the airwaves. He listens 3 times.
3 times. That just shows you how consuming this is. It confirms the man was innocent. Period.
And that sends him down this terrifying psychological rabbit hole. He's arguing with himself, what you're thinking of doing is crazy, and then, once you start, you must keep on.
That phrase, once you start, you must keep on. That is the hinge between his internal conflict and this external threat. It comes from his father's mantra.
You have to push through to the bitter end.
Yeah.
No flinching, no turning away.
Yes. And this isn't about, just saying you're sorry. It's a deeply ingrained, almost fanatical commitment to follow through, even if the action is violent. It's like a dark mirror of the NA step of making amends.
Amends is supposed to fix harm.
Right. Here, he seems ready to create new, spectacular harm, all driven by this idea of absolute, unflinching commitment. It's an incredible tension. He's twisting the idea of recovery, which is supposed to bring you peace, into a justification for targeted violence.
So who is the man whose murder started all this? Let's move to Alan Duffery.
Duffery was the definition of respectable success. Chief loan officer at First Lake City Bank, got promoted in 2022. He was living the life most people in that city aspired to.
But that success made him a target.
A fatal one. He beat out a colleague, Carrie Tolliver, for that promotion, which was a very serious salary bump. And Tolliver didn't just want professional revenge, he wanted total annihilation. He framed Duffery for child pornography.
And this is where you see the clinical cruelty of Tolliver's plan. The police later figure out that Tolliver allegedly only wanted Duffery to serve a couple of years.
Yeah, because the prison time wasn't the real sentence.
No, the true life sentence was getting Duffery on the National Sex Offender Registry.
And if you don't fully appreciate what that means, it is a permanent mark of social and civic death. I mean, we're talking about massive restrictions. You can't live near schools or parks. You have constraints on housing, on what you do online.
Your life is over. Tolliver knew that even if Duffery got out, his career, his community, all of it would be ruined forever. It's revenge through protracted societal exile.
It's devastating. And then comes the twist of just, almost unbearable irony. Tolliver gets late-stage pancreatic cancer.
So, facing his own death, he tries to clear his conscience. He confesses in February in a letter to ADA Allen.
But the sources say the ADA just sat on the letter. The system, again, failed Duffery.
So Tolliver, realizing the legal system is burying his confession, he goes to the media, he goes to Buckeye Brandon.
Which leads to the story and the podcast that Trigg heard. But the timing is just the tragic hammer blow. Duffery had already been shanked in prison last month. He died while his accuser was looking for absolution.
Detective Janes's observation just hit so hard. She says Tolliver's confession was sort of like locking the barn door after the horse was stolen.
And this whole sequence, the wrongful conviction, the delayed confession, the institutional failure, the death, that is the philosophical springboard for the threat.
So let's pivot to that threat. Lieutenant Lewis Warwick gets a letter. It's computer-printed, one sheet marked confidential. And it's even CC'd to the chief of police. The author signs it, Bill Wilson.
And this author is careful, calculating, and chillingly rational. They start by referencing the Blackstone rule.
Right. Better for 10 guilty men to go free rather than for one innocent man to suffer.
Which is a foundational principle of Western justice, right? Protect the innocent above all else.
And then the author proposes this terrifying corollary, which they say is the cornerstone of their whole action. The innocent should be punished for the needless death of an innocent.
What a radical reinterpretation of justice. It's not about punishing the people who framed Duffery or sat on the letter. It's about punishing the system itself and everyone who benefits from it.
And the punishment isn't killing the guilty. It's killing more innocents to make the guilty parties suffer more.
It's premeditated cruelty. The author is explicit. They don't want a quick death for those responsible because that would end their suffering. They want them to suffer prolonged guilt. The goal, in their words, is for them to rue the day.
And this whole horrifying plan is, according to the author, an act of atonement.
The twisting of that word, atonement, is so key. In a spiritual sense, atonement is about making amends, reconciliation. Here, it's a justification for terror.
And the threat is precise. I will kill 13 innocents and 1 guilty.
Lieutenant Warwick gets the danger immediately.
Yeah.
They know Duffery's the catalyst, the needless death. But then they're struggling with the math. Is the guilty one in the 13? Is it 14 victims total?
The ambiguity is part of the terror.
Of course. And this leads Warwick to that comparison that the most dangerous criminals are crazy and not crazy at the same time. Like Timothy McVeigh, who just rationalized mass murder as collateral damage for some higher goal.
If the author thinks they're restoring some cosmic balance through murder, you can't deter them in the normal ways.
So to stop this, we have to rely on the investigators. Detective Izzy Janes, she's an ace detective, very cynical about bureaucracy, is partnered with Tom Etta, who she calls Hungry Hippo.
But her real resource is private investigator Holly Gibney.
Right. Holly runs her firm, Finders Keepers, by herself. She's cautious. The sources mention she's still very careful about health precautions, always has Purell, wears a mask indoors.
They have a bond. They've been through some really complex, high-stakes stuff before. Izzy knows Holly sees the angles that other people miss.
So when Izzy shows Holly the letter, Izzy's first thought is that Bill Wilson must be in the legal world because of the Blackstone rule reference.
But Holly just dismisses that, says it's semi-common knowledge.
And then Holly delivers the crucial insight that just cracks the whole case wide open. She connects the dots. Bill Wilson
was the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous?
Yes. The reference isn't judicial at all. It's rooted in recovery.
That is the huge aha moment. The author didn't pick that name randomly.
Not at all. Holly suggests the writer might be religious, pointing out AA's emphasis on God, let go and let God.
Yeah.
And she notes that atonement is a very Catholic concept.
And that immediately ties this cold, calculated threat right back to the world of recovery, where Trigg is struggling with his father's mantra, And his own need to make amends.
This symbolism is so potent. I mean, to co-opt the name of the founder of AA, a movement built on honesty and peaceful amends, and use it to justify philosophical murder. It suggests the author is either in recovery and violently distorting the principles.
Or they know the language of recovery intimately and are using it to give their actions this veneer of righteous conviction.
Lieutenant Warwick doesn't waste a second. Izzy and Ed are told to find Carrie Tolliver at Kinder Memorial immediately, assuming he's even still alive, and interview him.
They also need to talk to Duffery's associates at the bank, his defense lawyer. Build a list of anyone who might have been affected by this.
They know the letter itself is a dead end. Computer printed, common paper, no prints. The investigation has to be about motive, connection, and speed. They're racing a clock set by a very cold, very calculating mind.
And Izzy and Holly both agree. The person who wrote this note could be the real deal, not just some crank. The urgency is immense.
So now you have these two parallel tracks running. You've got the emotional, almost fanatical compulsion of Trigg, driven by his father's no-flinching mantra to make amends.
And the cold, philosophical calculation of Bill Wilson, seeking atonement by making the guilty live through the terror of seeing innocents die. The irony is just so deep.
It is. The justice system failed Alan Duffery through inaction. And now, a figure is stepping in to perform this act of twisted overaction to force suffering on those who failed to act. The goal is prolonged psychological torture. Rue the day.
So we've established this intense, almost spiritual drive behind Trigg's actions and the devastating sequence of events that led to the threat. We know the author is wrapping mass murder in the language of justice and redemption.
And as the detectives start their work, you have to consider the final, terrible question implied by the threat. It says 13 innocent and 1 guilty must die for atonement. If this is all for the needless death of Alan Duffery, who is the single guilty person in Bill Wilson's twisted view.
Is it Carrie Tolliver, the one who framed him? Is it the ADA who sat on the letter?
Or, given how radical this whole idea is, maybe the truly guilty party is someone Trigg knows, someone much closer to home.
It forces you to consider what happens when a desire for amends and obsession with atonement merge into a single violent commitment. What kind of closure can possibly be found in an act that's designed purely to maximize suffering? That's what Izzy Janes and Holly Gibney are now fighting to discover.